Welcome to the Varsity Voices, where we give you the latest and greatest in the Chicago Catholic League and high school football updates. I'm Dan Frevaletti, and here with me is my co-host, Joe Frevaletti. And Joe, it's been an interesting couple weeks in the Catholic League, hasn't it?
It has. You know, you would think that this would be the slow time where there's not much news being made, but there's been a couple of things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, which I think bear mentioning, Dan. But before we do that, I'm noticing, looking at you, that you've got something over your left shoulder there.
Yeah.
And I'm liking it. What do you have
I've
in
got
your,
a Varsity
in your
Voices
recording studio?
Yeah, it's in my studio, in the the remote studio. Yeah, I got a new print with the Varsity Voices. If you can see it, I would bring my camera closer, but I'd screw it up for sure and knock down the print in the meantime.
That's
I'm
true.
sure.
Yes.
But there's you and me on there, like we're on stage.
I see that.
And then there's Zuko. You see Zuko sitting next to me?
I see Zuko. He's got a nice chair.
Yeah, he's got a nice chair, right? And then there's the prognosticus sitting next to you.
Who's looking very surly.
Yeah,
as usual.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, I like that. So, people, you got to watch us. We appreciate people listening, obviously.
Right.
But if you go to YouTube and you watch us, you get to see all this that we're talking about, right?
Exciting.
It is very exciting.
Yes.
And you get to see Dan and me.
You get to see Dan and me.
All
that one I know.
All right. Very
Not
good.
Like inter and intra. Still don't know it. Won't know it for this year coming up. I promise you that. So that'll be a discussion too.
I might ask my executive assistant about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's going to come up multiple times once we get into the season, right?
Yeah. It's going to happen before that, because I think we'll do some previews. We've started talking a little bit about the divisions and players to watch and that sort of thing, and we're going to finish those up too, Joe. So we've done 2 divisions so far, right? Or 3?
We've done the green and the white.
The new green and the new white.
Yes, and we're going to this coming week. We're going to do the orange at a minimum.
Yeah.
Maybe another one too.
Yes.
The following week. So we'll see. We've got some other things set up, so we're going to have to do some scheduling, some logistics here, Dan.
So Joe, if that's not enough for people, if they want more Varsity Voices,
and who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? We started something new in the past week. Why don't you tell them, give them the exciting news about where they can get more of Joe and Dan?
Yeah. So, other than just listening to our podcasts and maybe, some of our social media out there as well with some of our clips and some of our segments, we appreciate people listening as well as going to our social media and checking things out there. But we've also started our Substack, Dan, which, it's a little different type of a way to present some of our content. It's more of a written format, although you can catch some of our podcast episodes out there, at least links to it or segments or clips. But there's a little bit more analysis and writing that's associated with Substack that I think people will find interesting, especially people who enjoy Illinois high school sports, enjoy the Chicago Catholic League. Some of the things that maybe we can't always share on, or we don't always share on some of our podcast episodes, we can share there because, like we just posted an article out there that you wrote, and, it's more about your thoughts regarding a particular topic in that, and goes a little bit deeper dive, and you can usually do that when you're writing something. So I think people will find that interesting. Not everybody, but I think a lot of people will.
I had to get the dust buster out for my writing skills, and get a dictionary and thesaurus, to crank that baby out. So, but I just felt like I had an idea that we've talked about that, I heard something, saw something, I can't remember what it was, but that made me think about that topic. And we can share it here. It's about disparity. And we talked a lot about it in the past, or this past season, and just the difference that we saw week in and week out between some of these divisions. And you know one team from the red making it out of the red and purple, making the playoffs. And that's going to go away because of the new playoff structure, but there's still going to be the crossover games, the interdivision games.
I think you mean intra.
Yes.
No.
And
Yeah.
so, I think that's an issue that the Catholic League, they do kind of address it with how they set up the league, and, kind of the promotion and relegation, I call it. It's not quite that basic, but they do address it a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see if there's different outcomes this year. So the article just goes into that a little bit more.
What I found, what I really enjoyed about that article, Dan, and you mentioned it's about disparity and within the Chicago Catholic League, and I agree, it is about that. But I think there's a little bit more detail in it that really kind of opened my eyes that you mentioned, and it's that the disparity, even though it's evident there, in certain sports and football, we cover football primarily. So,
Yeah.
We see it, but, you talk about the schools having to make a choice, right? Or, maybe the disparity is not something that is inevitable for them. It's something that it's a choice, that there's other things involved with going to a particular school other than just football or just
Right.
sports,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's their faith, there's, developing the students and student athletes as people are going to be contributors once they move on from high school. I mean, so it's not that they don't want to be one of the top teams or top sports programs in the
Right.
Chicago Catholic League. It's like their mission or whatever might be something which is a little bit different than some other school, right? And
Yeah.
it might put a little more focus, a little more priority on academics or on developing students in some
Service,
particular way.
any of
Right.
those things that
Yes.
that are
So,
that are probably more long lasting,
mhm.
than football, if we're honest with ourselves. But the other thing that kind of hope people think about is what does that mean on the day to day? I don't know that any school would ever say we don't care about football, and that's not what I meant about it. I think they all care about football, but it's like, when you're on in that Friday night and you're getting your butt kicked, or do you really care about the overall mission of the school,
Right.
right? And it's
Yeah, yeah,
and how do you
yeah.
feel as a parent or a coach, or are you just supposed to say, good effort, way to go, you're out here, you're doing this, it's not easy, this thumping that you took is going to pay dividends down the road, trust me. It's easier, it's one of those things that's, I think, easier said than done.
Yeah. The other interesting aspect of that article, and you mentioned it, was in regards to social media,
Yeah,
right?
it's a big part.
And we follow obviously the Chicago Catholic League very closely. We follow all the news stories. We follow all the social media. We follow all the kids or the players and the coaches and their social media. And you know, you make the distinction between, is there a correlation between those schools and programs that have a very good and significant social media presence? Is there a correlation between that and how successful their program might happen to be?
Right.
Right. I mean, because we know, you and I do a lot of research on this. Some are way better at it than others.
Yeah.
And in some of the cases, a fair amount of the cases, the better schools or the better programs, from a social media aspect, at least as far as their presence and things that they're doing as far as promoting their program, promoting their kids, promoting their athletes, it seems like some of those schools are the ones that are kind of at the top, right, within the Chicago Catholic League. Whether it's the program, whether it's the administration, whether it's the coaches, or even down to the athletes themselves.
Right.
I found that you can look across social media and see that here's 4, 5, 6, 7 of the schools within the Chicago Catholic League do a really good job, are out there on social media a lot. And oh, by the way, they happen to be some of the more successful programs within the Chicago Catholic League. So, not sure if there's a correlation or if you want to draw one or not, but I just found that interesting too, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. So check out our Substack. Go to how do you find it, Joe?
You go to substack.com and search the Varsity Voices, and you will find us.
All right.
I think it's substack.com /the Varsity Voices. So
Okay.
you can go out there and, like you said at the beginning, we just got started in this with last week, but we're going to be promoting that or putting a lot more content out there. So make sure you go out there and you check that out as well as all of everything else that we're doing.
Is it
Yeah,
free?
it is free. As of this point, it is free. But we would like for you to subscribe there.
Yes.
You can subscribe for free at this point. If Dan ever provides anything better, we may charge you $1.99 or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Everyone else does. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good. That's it's fun to do, and hopefully we can keep finding some relevant topics to talk about, discuss, and
Oh,
post on out
absolutely.
there.
We've got topics, that we can discuss a lot. So we
Yeah.
will do that. So listeners, check out our Substack as well as all of our other places. So Dan, you mentioned at the top some interesting news over the past couple weeks within the Chicago Catholic League, and I would say one is Coach Passarella, who is the head coach at DePaul Prep, has left the program.
Yeah.
And I think he's landed at Elmhurst University, right?
Right.
So is that a Varsity Voices effect thing?
Could be both of these things.
Could be.
I felt like there was some Varsity Voices effect going on. The Varsity Voices effect.
Yeah.
And yeah, I saw him on Elmhurst website as their defensive coordinator, and so we wish him well.
Yeah,
I hope to talk
absolutely.
to him again. He became someone that we enjoyed talking with, and he was definitely in it for the right reasons, and really was a guy who was forward thinking as a head coach, and you never know the circumstances. You just know it was kind of sudden. It's definitely after the normal window of when typically coaching changes are made. So people can speculate all you want, including us, but so you don't know what the circumstances were. We wish Coach Passarella the best, but it'll be interesting to see what DePaul Prep does. Like I said, the timing isn't great.
It's terrible timing.
Yeah, you've got the summer that you're trying to put a
Yeah.
schedule together for, and you've got a bunch of players that are now in limbo. You don't know what that means as far as we've seen how transfers happen now in high school, and way more so than they did even 4 years ago. We're seeing that whatever trickle down effect there is from college, we're seeing it now in high school a little bit more and more every year. So they've probably got some work to do. They're probably hustling behind the scenes to see who might be interested. It's probably, I would think, a lot of coaches interested in that job because
Right.
they've got great facilities. We've been there. The field is awesome. The school is super cool. They've got great history. They've got an awesome sports program. They won a state championship 2 years ago, so they've got really good players that probably came to DePaul Prep,
Because
partly,
of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
partly based
Yeah.
on the fact that they were a program on the rise. So I'll be interested to follow that and see who takes that job.
Yeah. You- And I would love to hear the circumstances about why it happened, but I'm not sure if I ever will.
Yeah.
Even though you said we've interviewed Coach Passarella a couple times over the past 2 years, and then he joined us for one of our playoffs prognosticus episodes,
Right.
right?
Right.
Where
That
he
was fun.
joined us
Yeah.
in that, yeah, which was a lot of fun. I like that he's going to my alma mater,
Yeah.
Elmhurst University.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I think he'll bring a certain level of professionalism, expertise in that. We know what a good coach he is, but I still, it's going to stick with me. Why did he leave?
Yeah,
DePaul
Joe, and it
Prep,
could be
but
as simple as, you know what, it came down to, something that I wanted to do for my family or I wanted to do for my career. It could be the opportunity at Elmhurst, maybe
yeah,
get back in the college game. So, to automatically associate it, we don't want to automatically say something happened. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe it was the opportunity to go to Elmhurst. The Varsity Voices effect of it, was that we had talked to the head coach. Um,
at Elmhurst,
yeah, yeah,
Coach
Coach
Heffernan.
Heffernan. Yeah,
Yeah,
we talked to Coach and we had asked about recruiting the Chicago Catholic League, and I think you did a little bit of a deep dive after that on Elmhurst roster and didn't find a ton of Catholic League guys on
there
that
were
roster.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
so
any, right?
yeah, and I think there might have been one that
Okay.
I saw on the roster, but even Coach Heffernan, when we interviewed him, he mentioned, that they wanted to start recruiting the Chicago Catholic League, more so than they have in the past. And I think this is his second year that he's at
Yeah.
Elmhurst.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So, but the other thing he mentioned, Dan, and this, it stuck in my head was that when we were talking to him, he was talking about he was in the process of interviewing coaches, assistant coaches, or
Right.
looking for
Yeah.
assistant coaches. So we know Coach Passarella is a big listener of the
Oh,
Varsity
I
Voices.
see where you're
So
going.
I'm like, Coach Passarella listened to that Friday morning. It's like, huh, might be a chance for me to get back into the college game.
Yeah.
These guys
Yeah.
brought it up. Who knows?
Oh, it's
So,
fun to speculate, isn't it?
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I enjoy speculating. You
Yes.
know how I am. Yeah. All right, so that's one of the items, big news. Tell people the other one, Dan, which this one just kind of shocked me even more so than Passarella leaving DePaul Prep, and this has to do with Loyola and
Yeah.
a former coach at
Former
Loyola.
coach, Illinois Coaches Association Hall of Famer, a great career, several state championships. John Holocek, who was instrumental in the rise of the Loyola program that you see today. He stepped down in 2022, retired, I think it was. It sounded like he wanted to get back in, so he was brought back as an assistant coach and has done that for at least a year, maybe two. But he was named the head coach at Loyola Academy this past week, so that was a real surprise. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, where did Coach Deschero go? And he received or got a new role within the program, Joe. And I find this really interesting. And this is totally Varsity Voices effect, because we started asking the question last year: are general managers coming to high school sports? And
Right,
his title will be general manager. And I didn't see if it was just for football. It might be all athletics. But
right.
he has got a GM title at Loyola Academy, where he will probably oversee, player development, and it sounds like player development on all levels. So he'll kind of be a roving, coach that is getting feedback from other players, giving feedback to players, maybe young coaches, maybe the lower level staffs. And I would imagine that there's something to do about, player retention and talent acquisition, right? That's what a general manager does.
You would think, right? Although I feel like, from a standpoint of Loyola, when Holosek was there, he did the majority of that, right? He put together just an outstanding program and won the championships. And But I do think it's reflective of, and the Varsity Voices effect of, the current state of high school athletics. That things have changed, and I think the programs that are aware of that and see that and are kind of preemptive in their approach. And I feel like Loyola has done that here with putting a GM in place. And I think that's the exact right move to do considering today's high school environment.
And especially in the Catholic League, Joe, think about what Coach Lynch said at Mount Carmel a couple years ago. We recruit every kid that walks in the door, football player or not,
Right.
and so it has become a big job, and it is a lot to there's a lot of organization, there's a lot of players to manage, there's a lot of schools to see. I would think that, as a head coach, I've talked to a couple head coaches that don't love that they've got to, coach all week, and then Saturday or Sundays, I think, is when youth football plays, but they've got to go and watch youth games, and they've got to make sure their staff is aware that this is a part of our job. I would think that, that is becoming a bigger and bigger role, a tougher and tougher job. So it makes sense that you've got someone whose focus is just that, because it is that important, and it's getting more important by the day.
Yeah. And if you want to be successful in the Chicago Catholic League, or really in high school sports in general, but really in the Chicago Catholic League, considering how competitive it is, I think you've got to think outside the box, right? And or push the envelope, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it on previous episodes about how there needs to be somebody in the school who is taking care of these new things which are now affecting high school sports, whether it's transfers, whether it's NIL, whether it's, just making sure you're attracting kids to the program year in and year out.
Keeping your kids.
Keeping your kids,
Yeah.
right, another thing. So, I really do. I give Loyola a lot of credit for putting this kind of structure in place.
Loyola had great success under Coach Deschereaux. They
Yeah.
were very good. They've got great lower levels that seem to be, we saw some of the sophomores that made such an impact on their
Mhm.
team this year, so they certainly weren't, lacking for talent. It didn't seem to. I don't know how their lower levels performed, as on the freshman or sophomore team, but you'd think that they're in a pretty good spot, but it's getting more and more competitive. We talk about DePaul Prep. DePaul Prep is could potentially have attracted some players that may have considered or gone to Loyola at some point. Maybe they took a closer look at DePaul Prep. And I don't know. Again, we're
Right.
speculating.
We
You
love
know,
to speculate.
yeah, that's what this
Yes.
that's what this is all about.
Right.
But you know what surprised me is that they actually gave him the title general manager. I thought for
Mhm.
sure when schools did this, it would be athletic director or assistant athletic director in charge of blank,
Yeah.
come up with a title that makes
Yeah.
sense. To general manager sounds like you are on the phone wheeling and dealing,
Yeah. It's a pro title.
Yeah.
Yeah. And college now too,
Yeah, it was
but
it was weird for me to first
yeah.
hear it in college. And,
Mhm.
so it's even stranger to hear that, for a high school, but again, I'm not surprised because we
No.
said that this is where it was going.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised it's Loyola who did it either. They seem to be that kind of school, that kind of program, and why call him an assistant AD? Let's just call him what he is. He is our general manager,
Yeah.
right? But here's one thing
I
I wanted
like
to
it, by
ask
the
you.
way.
I like it too.
Yeah,
I
sign us
do.
up.
Yeah, sign me up. They talk about copycat leagues and copycat things. So now that Loyola has put a GM in place, how long is it before some of the other Chicago Catholic League programs, teams, do that as well? I think I think it'll probably happen, don't you think?
Joe probably has, but they are, because they're a different title, that maybe we don't know it, but there's probably someone at several schools that is doing this type of role, and just have a different title. But
Right.
it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was someone who they're like, hey, we've got to try and manage this where we can attract players for athletics, not just football, but all athletics, and we've got to have that organized. And I've got my duties as athletic director. My plate is full. I need someone to just do that. I don't want our head coach to have to do that. He can be as involved or not as involved as he wants. We want someone that is the stakeholder for this type of thing. And so I bet it's happening under a different title, but I'm going to say another one more cycle. After next year, you're going to see someone else have a GM title in this league.
Right. And
Yeah.
and Varsity Voices effect
The
for
Varsity
sure.
Voices effect.
We
We have to go back. When I
we
say
are
we, I mean you.
right.
Because we talked about it, Joe, last year, over a year
Yeah,
ago.
over a year ago. We've
Yeah.
talked about it probably a year and a half ago, and again several times over the past year.
So we joke about the Varsity Voice effect, but it gets something out there, right? It's like someone says it or talks about it, and someone might hear it and be like, "Huh, that's something maybe we should
Not a bad
consider."
idea. How many
Yeah,
times do you do that? I do it all the time.
all
I'm
the time.
listening to somebody, I read something, I'm like, "Hmm, that's a good idea. I
Yeah,
think, we should take a look at that."
right, right.
So, do you wanna put your name out there, Dan, for any of the other Chicago Catholic League schools that
Sure,
are
call
looking
me.
for a general manager? Okay.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Alright. Yeah.
yeah.
I think you'd be good at it, by
Get
the
that
way.
checkbook out.
Right. So, alright, 2 big pieces of news. And any other news you got, Dan? Anything else
Let's see. I
that you
think.
you've been hearing? I know you got your ear to the ground and
Oh, yes.
yeah, all the time.
Just
So
yeah, there are people I'm seeing as we do this for other divisions. There are people I'm seeing that there's transfers into the Catholic League and that names I didn't recognize. I'm like, how did I not know this person? And when you look, you see they were somewhere else.
right.
So yeah, that's the comings and goings are happening and probably will continue to happen into the summer. So
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And, it's kind of weird. And I've thought about this a couple times and doing the research for our, division episodes where we're talking about future dogs and who's next, on each of the different teams. And um, I'm finding the same thing. Like, why didn't I know who this person was? And then I dig a little bit deeper and like, oh, all right, they came over from somewhere else. So um, I think obviously there's been a fair amount of that already, but I think, we're in the transfer season,
yeah,
right?
yep,
I think January to March is kind of the transfer season in high school, it seems like right now.
yeah, and you'll probably see some more of it in the summer too. After school year ends, you might see some kids that transfer after their school year ends.